A young woman went to another town to look for a better job. She promised her mother she would come and visit her often. But 4 months passed, and she still didn't come home. Her mother missed her very much. One day, in the middle of winter, the woman shouted, "April is here!" How is it possible? April was her daughter's name. She finally came to visit her family. It's usually under you. Take away its first letter, and it'll be above you. Take away its first 2 letters, and you won't see it. What is it? It's a chair, which can transform into hair and air. Look at this picture and try to understand what's wrong with it. Why would this young lady put a pair of boots on the table and a saw in the fridge? How about this image? Does anything strike you as odd? There's a snowman in the oven and a fish in the toaster. Dennis, Maria, and Julie were at a party. They decided to play a game. There were 5 hats, 2 red ones and 3 yellow ones. The friends closed their eyes, took random hats, and put them on their heads. Then they opened their eyes and looked at one another. Each of them had to guess what color the hat on their head was. Dennis and Julie said they didn't know, but Maria exclaimed that she knew the color of her hat. What color was it? It was yellow. Maria saw that Dennis and Julie were wearing red hats, and she knew there were only 2 of those. You can't share it until you take it. What is it? It's a photo. You see a combination of letters OTTFFSS. What should be the next 3 letters in the line? They should be ENT. These are the first letters of the names of the numbers from 1 to 10. Michael was walking along the street when a sealed envelope landed near his feet. The guy picked it up. Inside, there was a key and a note. It said, "Help, 323." Michael entered the building. Soon, he found a door number 323 and used the key to open it. He saw a man near the open window. He was gagged and tied to a chair. Once free, the man exclaimed, "2 men broke into my office, tied me up, and took all the money from my safe. Luckily, my hands were free. I managed to write this note and throw it together with the key out the window." Michael didn't believe the man and called the police. Why? The envelope was sealed. How could the man do it if he was gagged? It can never be thrown, but it can be caught. People are always looking for ways to lose it. What is it? It's a cold. 2 teams were playing soccer against each other. Each of the teams scored 2 goals in total. And still, it wasn't a tie. One team won and the other lost. How come? One of the teams scored an own goal. Young but very popular blogger Eric wrote his first book. It was a huge success. The guy was preparing for his first book signing. He was very excited and nervous, so he took a break to steady his nerves in a quiet corner. But even at 6 p.m., when the meeting was supposed to start, Eric was nowhere to be seen. In 10 minutes, a security guard found him lying on the floor in the bathroom. Someone had hit the writer on the head. The police had 3 suspects. Angela, his agent, said she had been solving some urgent organizational issues. Frank, one of the fans, said he had been a great lover of Eric's books for years. He wouldn't do anything to harm the writer. And Patrick, the security guard, said he had been doing his job, keeping the fans away from the entrance. Who hit Eric? It was Frank. It was Eric's first book. Frank couldn't possibly be reading his books for years. Look at these guys carefully. Who is a fake fireman? It's the guy on the right. He's not wearing a helmet and doesn't have a special bag. Plus, his pants aren't part of the uniform. You have 3 empty cups and 10 sugar cubes. You need to distribute these sugar cubes between the cups so that each of them contains an odd number of cubes. Put 3 sugar cubes in the first cup and 3 cubes in the second one. After that, put the remaining 4 cubes and the second cup in cup number 3. Now, the first cup has 3 sugar cubes, and the second one has 3 sugar cubes too. As for the third cup, it has 7 sugar cubes, 4 of its own and 3 in the second cup. 2 roommates, Deborah and Rachel, were walking home after doing their weekly grocery shopping. Deborah kept complaining about how heavy her bags were. Then Rachel told her, "I don't understand why you're upset. If you gave me one of your bags, I would have twice more bags than you do. And if I gave you one of mine, we would have the same number of bags." How many bags were the girls carrying? Rachel had 7 bags, while Deborah was only carrying 5 bags. Detective Black's assistant, Josh, was late for work. When he arrived, he told his boss the following story. "I was driving along the highway when I saw an unconscious man lying on the left side of the road. I picked him up and took him to the nearest hospital. Finally, he came to his senses. He told me he had been pushed out of the moving vehicle. The bag and all of his money and documents were left inside." But Detective Black said the man was lying. How did he figure it out? If the man had indeed been pushed out of the car, he would have been lying on the right side of the road, not the left one. Kenneth was starving. He found a nice diner that served burgers and bought one. After a waiter brought him his order, Kenneth went to the bathroom to wash his hands. But when he came back, his burger was gone. The guy looked around the diner and understood who had taken his lunch. Can you figure it out? It's the young woman with a dog sitting at her feet and sniffing the air. If she was just drinking coffee, which is what she's pretending to do, the dog wouldn't be so interested in her. Mary was walking through the park when she spotted a hungry dog. The woman decided to share her snack with the animal. Unfortunately, there was a stream between her and the pooch. She squatted down to attract the dog's attention and showed it the food. The animal was next to her in no time. There was no bridge over the stream, and still the dog wasn't wet. How is it possible? It happened in the winter, and the stream was frozen. A rich entrepreneur disappeared from his office. The only thing he left behind was a note with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, and 11, and a calendar. The police have 5 suspects: James, Kevin, Carol, Jason, and Laura. Who knows something about the man's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers mean months of the year, and the first numbers of these months make up the culprit's name, Jason. Matthew bought a new smartphone and a phone case. He paid $310. The gadget cost $300 more than the case. How much did Matthew pay for the phone? He paid $305. Tony was hosting a party. 3 hours after it started, several guests came up to the guy. They asked where they could charge their phones. Unfortunately, there was only one socket in Tony's house. The guy checked all the power strips he had. Help him figure out how many phones he can charge at a time. Tony can charge 8 phones. Look, one strip has its cord cut. The strip with one socket is literally useless. One of the strips doesn't have a cord whatsoever. Another has no hole for a plug. Plus, one socket on each of the 2 strips will be taken by the plugs from the others. A rich businessman called the police. When he arrived at his office in the morning, he remembered he had left a bunch of important documents in his safe at home. He sent his secretary John to bring them. But the guy called half an hour later. He said the safe was open. The documents were still inside, but all the money had disappeared. The police examined the businessman's home office. They tried to find some fingerprints. Nothing at all. The detective had 3 suspects: the secretary, the businessman's nephew Mark, and the housekeeper. The secretary said he had called his boss as soon as he had seen the safe. Mark said, "I opened the door for John, then I went to my room and found out about the accident only after John called me." The housekeeper told the police she had been very busy with her chores and hadn't been to the office since the previous evening. Who took the money? It was the secretary. There were no fingerprints in the room, but John was there and definitely touched different things. If he hadn't been guilty, he wouldn't have wiped his fingerprints off. Can you find a dino that is different than the rest? Right, it's this one. Uh-oh, Tommy was exploring old caves outside the city when he got trapped in a mysterious dungeon. There were 3 ways out, but only one of them was safe. Behind the first door, a fire was raging. Behind the second door, there was acid rain, which could melt any substance within seconds. Behind the third door, there was a huge brown bear that hadn't eaten for 2 years. Which way should Tommy choose? Tommy should choose the third way. No animal can go for 2 years without food and survive. Barely. It was a stormy day, and it had been raining for several hours straight. A car accident happened in a tunnel. The yellow car crashed into the red one. The driver of the yellow car said it had been raining so heavily he hadn't seen anything, so the accident wasn't totally his fault. But the police asked the man to stop lying and claimed it was all his fault. Why? The accident happened in the tunnel. It couldn't be raining there. Mrs. McAdams, who was having a day off with her friends, came back home in the middle of the day to change her clothes. There, she found out that her daughter, Eveline, who she'd grounded, wasn't at home. Mrs. McAdams got angry and texted Eveline, asking where she was. Eveline texted her back, saying she was at school. The girl even attached a picture of the classroom. Mrs. McAdams didn't believe her daughter and told her to come home immediately. How did she understand Eveline wasn't at school? Look closely at her cell phone. It's Sunday. There's no school on Sundays. Ned works in a club. His job is to check people's ID cards and to not let suspicious people or people younger than 21 years old get inside. Take a look at these 3 ID cards and figure out who shouldn't enter the club. The first person is already 21, and nothing else looks suspicious in his ID. The second girl seems alright too. It's written that Brielle was born on September 31st. But such date doesn't exist. Her ID must be fake. Mrs. Cabell is the owner of a small company producing expensive designer cups. On Friday, when the working week was finally over, she got a call from her bank. The woman found out that someone had stolen all the money she had saved. Mrs. Cabell realized it must have been one of her workers, so she asked each of them what they had been doing that day. Sloan, a sales manager, said she had been talking to their clients and looking for new ones. Atticus, a potter, said he always made 1 cup a day. and he showed all the cups he had done that week. Sierra, a designer, said she had been working, but she also admitted she hadn't been really productive that day because of some family issues. Who lied? Atticus. There are 5 working days in a regular week. The man said he made 1 mug a day, but he only showed 4 mugs. It means he missed 1 day of work. Lennox and Finn were friends living in the same college dorm. One day, Lennox reported that something had happened to his friend. He said Finn hadn't left his room all day. He also never responded to any of Lennox's texts. In the evening, Lennox started to worry and knocked on Finn's door, but the guy didn't answer. Lennox peeked through the keyhole and saw that his friend was lying on the floor, so he called the police. After that, Lennox got arrested. Why? Lennox has a bandage on his right eye, but the keyhole is located in such a way that it's only possible to look inside with the right eye. It means the guy couldn't do it. He simply knew what had happened. Esme was having a walk in the forest and got lost. For about the 20th time. Hey, don't ask. Anyway, she found the witch's house, walked in, said hi, petted the cat, and asked the witch to show her the way home. But the witch had a problem. She was learning a new spell and accidentally did something strange to her chairs. On the bright side, she now had a riddle for Esme to solve. The witch had 20 chairs. Now, some of the chairs only had 2 legs, and half of the rest had no legs at all. How many legs did all these 20 chairs have in total? We know that some of the chairs have, on average, 2 legs per chair. The rest of them have either 4 legs or no legs at all. And since half of the rest have no legs and the other half have 4, together they have 2 legs per chair. So there are exactly 40 legs. Mr. Tucker was a businessman. He wanted to find an interesting hobby to impress people. He chose art, even though he knew nothing about it. Still, he kept buying paintings and even owned a couple of famous masterpieces. He liked to invite his potential business partners over to show off his collection. One day, his guest was Miss Geneva Darby, a young lady who owned a jewelry business. As always, Mr. Tucker boasted about his collection, but Miss Darby wasn't impressed. Why? Look closer at this supposedly 16th century painting. There are a couple of cars on the road, but there were no cars at that time, so the painting must be fake. Evie and Kai were planning to go on a bike tour with their friends. Unfortunately, Evie didn't feel well, so she canceled on her friends and asked Kai to stay with her. Kai was disappointed but agreed. Evie fell asleep. When she woke up, she already felt better. She offered Kai to ride their bikes a bit, just the 2 of them. But when they went outside, Evie realized that while she had been sleeping, Kai had been out with the friends without her. How did she understand it? Look, Evie's bike is all wet. It must have been raining while she was asleep. But Kai's bike is dry. It means that he used it and then wiped it off. Or maybe he wasn't even in the area when it was raining. 2 weeks ago, a bank was robbed, but the robber hadn't been found yet. A phone call woke Detective Callum up in the middle of the night. His colleague reported that a farmer had found the money. When the detective arrived, he questioned the farmer. The man said, I argued with my wife and went outside. That's when I found a bag with money in a cornfield. Detective Callum asked if the farmer had noticed anything suspicious before. The farmer replied, About 2 weeks ago, before going to bed, I looked out of the window. I saw a man walking through the field. It was a full moon and I could clearly see his silhouette. But there wasn't enough light to notice more details about him. The farmer was arrested. Why? The farmer said it had been a full moon 2 weeks before, but it's impossible. As you see, it's a full moon now. The farmer is lying. But why? Ashley was hurrying to an unplanned business meeting. She asked her boyfriend, Dean, to walk the dog. Dean agreed. But then his friend called and invited him to play a new video game. So the guy decided to skip walking the dog that day and joined his friends. He and Ashley met right outside the house when they both were going back home. Ashley asked what Dean had been doing. The guy said, "I walked the dog and then went to play video games with my friends." Ashley immediately understood he was lying. How did she figure it out? It's winter. Look at the footprints in the snow. There are Ashley's footprints going both ways and Dean's footprints going both ways too. But there are no dog footprints. Mrs. Rivers reported that someone had broken into her house. They stole all the money and jewelry she kept in her living room. Detective Callum arrived to investigate the crime. The room was a mess. It was obvious that someone had been looking for something there. But in the end, the detective concluded that there was no robbery. Mrs. Rivers made the whole thing up. Why did he decide so? Look at this very expensive and fragile tea set lying on the floor. If a criminal had really been there, he wouldn't have cared about the set. It would be smashed after falling down. It seems that when Mrs. Rivers was staging a robbery, she didn't feel like breaking her expensive tea set. Viviana and Malcolm were working outside. Malcolm was repairing the roof, and Viviana was working in the garden. Suddenly, a hammer fell from the roof and hit Viviana on the head. She was taken to a hospital, and the police came to figure out what had happened. When Malcolm told them everything, the police arrested him for staging an accident. Why didn't they believe the guy? Viviana was working right next to the house. She was sitting under the roof. If the hammer had fallen accidentally, it would have slid down the roof and fallen behind the woman's back. It could hit her only if someone threw it at her on purpose. Well, that's not nice. Lucas and Hudson are walking. Which one of them isn't very smart? It's Hudson. He's staring at the screen of his phone and can miss that cliff and fall over. Even though Lucas is blind, he still has his stick. With its help, he'll know about the edge of the cliff as soon as he reaches it. He's safe. Opal is spending a vacation climbing the mountains. Karis is climbing Everest. Can you tell which one of them isn't smart? It's Opal. Look, she's forgotten about the safety rope and is climbing without it. Not good. Gabriel and Archer are bloggers who take selfies in dangerous places. This time, Gabriel is taking a selfie while surfing a huge wave, and Archer has chosen to take one while standing on the edge of the bridge above the lake. Who is not being careful? It's Gabriel. They're both doing very risky things, but at least Archer has some people around who can help him if something happens. Gabriel is alone in the ocean. It's a very early morning after a party. Egan and Bradley are driving their children to college. Can you tell who's not smart? Egan. His son isn't even in the car. Delilah and Ellery are on vacation. Both of them decided to learn something new. Delilah is skiing in the forest, and Ellery is practicing skating on the lake. Who's in danger? It's Ellery. Look, the ice on the lake is cracking, and there's no one around to help her. She should get out of there as fast as possible. Ariana and Eliza are getting ready for a barbecue party they're hosting. Ariana is making salads outside, and Eliza is decorating the house and the garden. Who's not being smart? It's Ariana. While she's busy with the salads, the meat is going bad in the sun. Karis, a mother of 4, returned home and saw that all the teenagers were quietly doing their own stuff. The oldest one, Amanda, was playing Uno, Gabriella was reading, Haven was painting. What was Ainsley doing? Ainsley was playing Uno with Amanda. Take a look at these guys and tell who is behaving stupidly. All the guys on the left, they will all fall in the end. The only guy who will stay on the tree is the one on the right. Detective Callum was spending his holiday in Hawaii. He was having his evening coffee on the terrace when he heard some noise and a scream. The balcony door of the room next to his was open, so he walked in and asked what had happened. A young actress, Chanel, was staying there. She said some man dressed in black and wearing a mask broke into her room and tried to take her away. She screamed and the criminal ran away, disappearing in the hallway. The actress asked Detective Callum to find the man immediately. But the detective said Chanel could try to fool someone else, and he'd rather return to his coffee. Why didn't he believe the girl? Look at the door of the actress's room. Lots of boxes are blocking it. If the man had indeed run out of the door, he'd have pushed all the stuff out of his way. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to open it. The girl just tried to make up some drama to get media attention. Adam came to his PE class and told the teacher that, unfortunately, he couldn't work out. He broke his arm the other day. But Adam had a bad reputation. The teacher didn't believe him and told the guy to stop fooling around. Do you believe Adam? Look, he has a cast on his arm, but it's placed over his jacket. It must be fake. Mrs. Miller reported that someone in the neighborhood had run up to her and stolen her bag. The authorities interrogated all the neighbors. Bryce said he had been away. I came home less than a minute ago. Arden said she'd spent all day at home and hadn't been outside. Easton said he had taken his dog for a walk, but he didn't steal anything or see anything strange. The authorities arrested one person. Who? They arrested Bryce. He said he'd just come home, but the water in the pot on the stove is boiling. He must have been at home for a while already. Ames worked in a clock store. One day he called the police. When they arrived, Ames told them he had been working when the electricity suddenly went off. He tried to solve the problem by himself first. Then he called the police. They soon figured out what had happened, and the lights were on again. Ames immediately checked the cash desk. Apparently, while the lights were off, someone broke into the store and stole all the money. But the police didn't believe him and arrested the man. Why? In the store, there were mechanical and electric clocks, but the difference between the time they display is just 10 minutes. Mechanical clocks don't stop when the electricity is off. It means that the lights were off only for about 10 minutes. Ames must have switched the electricity off by himself and then called the police. Nelson was a writer. He was always disturbed by teenagers gathering outside his house and couldn't focus. One day, the man called the police. When they arrived, he said someone had thrown a stone at his office window. He asked the police to officially prohibit the teenagers from coming anywhere close to his house. But the detective didn't believe him. Why? Look, the glass is broken at the bottom, but this part of the window is protected by the balcony outside. Nelson must have broken the window himself to accuse the teenagers. A family was on vacation, and they had no idea what day it was. Dad said, I'm pretty sure it's either Monday or Tuesday. Mom added, all I know is that it wasn't Wednesday yesterday. Jake said, "It must be Wednesday, or the weekend." Sienna was in doubt. "Maybe it's Friday." Ruby said, "Friday is tomorrow." Can you tell what day it is if only one statement is true? According to Dad, it's Monday or Tuesday. According to Mom, it's any day other than Thursday. So it might be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Jake is sure it's Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday. Sienna claims it's Friday, and according to Ruby, it's Thursday. The only day that is mentioned only once is Thursday. It means Ruby is right. Paige and Quinley were sisters. They were hanging out together in their room. Quinley had a crush on a guy from her school. She decided to write him a letter. Paige thought it was a bad idea, but Quinley wouldn't listen to her. Once she was almost done, Quinley went downstairs to get some tea. When she returned, the letter was gone. Paige said that a gust of wind suddenly blew in and the letter flew out of the window. But Quinley didn't believe her and asked Paige to give her the letter back. How did she figure out her sister had taken the letter? When the wind blows inside a room from the outside, nothing can possibly fly out of the window. Colton got into an accident and had memory loss. Kennedy and Isla both claimed to be his girlfriend. They took the guy to the place where they had their first date. Each of the girls hoped Colton would decide she was his real girlfriend. Have you figured out who the guy dated? Look, there are initials painted on the tree, saying C plus I. It means Colton's girlfriend is Isla. In a hotel, someone robbed a rich gentleman. The only witness was Joseph, a cleaning man working in the hotel. He was tidying a room nearby at the time of the robbery. The detective asked the man if he had seen anything. Joseph said, "When I heard the noise, I was going to enter the room, but then the door opened and hit me on the head. I couldn't see for a while." Joseph even showed the police officer a bruise on his forehead. The detective didn't believe Joseph, though, and arrested him for assisting the robber. Why? The door couldn't hit Joseph because it opens inwards, so he lied. After an accident, Karis was staying in the hospital. Only relatives were allowed to visit her. But 3 guys wanted to see the girl: her boyfriend, a classmate who was in love with her, and her brother. Each of them said he was her brother. Take a look at the guys' identity cards and try to figure out who her brother is. Her brother must be Philip. The age difference between Karis and Colton is 4 months, and between Karis and Nero 5. Such an age gap is too small for them to be siblings. Maddox came to the police station to report his cousin Damon. The guy asked Maddox if he could stay with him for a couple of days. In the evening, Damon asked the host to bring him some fruit from the basement. When Maddox went there, Damon locked him inside. There was no electricity and no light in the basement, and Maddox didn't have a single gadget with him that could help him out. 2 days later, at 4 a.m., he heard his cousin drive away. It was only later that day that he managed to get out, thanks to a postman. Maddox found out that all his money had been stolen. But the police officers didn't believe him. Why? Maddox said he hadn't had any gadgets to check the time. It was also too dark to see anything on a regular clock. Then how could he figure out when exactly his cousin drove away? Someone stole a rare diamond from Mr. Lauren's house. The police suspect Jack, a notorious burglar. A detective immediately goes to his house, but when Jack finds out the man doesn't have a search warrant, he doesn't let him in. In an hour, the police arrive again, this time with the warrant. They search the entire house but find nothing. They're ready to leave when one of the police officers exclaims, "I know where the diamond is! And have you figured it out too?" When the police first came to Jack, his hair was much shorter. He must be wearing a wig, and the diamond is hidden underneath. On Tuesday afternoon, a man came to the police station. He claimed his car had been stolen. Detective Brown asked the man to show him the place where it had happened. They went to a movie theater. The man said that the day before, he and his wife had come to watch a movie. They left the car in the parking lot, but when the movie was over, the car was gone. After looking around for a couple of minutes, the detective understood who the criminal was. And have you figured it out? There was no theft. The man is lying to get the insurance money. Look, there are no movies on Monday. Maria Walker, a rich businesswoman, collected ancient pieces of art. One day, she managed to buy a priceless Chinese figurine. Maria locked it in a safe in her office and went home. But the next morning, the figurine was gone.
Oh no!
The police have 3 suspects, all of them Ms. Walker's subordinates. The detective asked each of them if they had taken the figurine from the safe. Beverly said she hadn't been to the office since Monday. Ralph said, "I don't know how to open safes, and I'm not interested in Chinese art." And Vincent said he had been to Ms. Walker's office after her departure, but he only took some documents he needed. Who is the thief? It's Ralph. Otherwise, how would he know the figurine was Chinese? A man wearing a hat, a bandana covering his face, and dark sunglasses robbed a bank. The police have 3 suspects. Look at them and try to figure out which one is the criminal. Usually, people tie bandanas under their ears, but in this case, the bandana covers the ears, probably hiding something that distinguishes the man from other people. The criminal must be the man with a large earring. Jesse Harris was a pilot. Once there was an emergency during a flight. Jesse had to land the plane right on the highway. Luckily, he was a skilled professional and no one was hurt. But Jesse himself hit his head and lost his memory. When he climbed out of the plane, 2 women ran toward him. Both of them claimed he was her husband. Can you figure out who's telling the truth? The woman on the left is a robot. Look, there's a USB port in her neck. Mary was a college teacher. It was the beginning of a new school year, and 3 new students joined the class. When Mary saw them, she immediately realized something was off about one of them. Who? It's the guy in the middle. He doesn't have a shadow. Logan worked as a security officer on a small cruise ship. One day, during a severe storm, he found Mr. Lewis lying on the deck. When the man came to his senses, he said someone had hit him on the head and taken his wallet. Logan had 3 suspects. He visited them in their cabins. Linda told him she was feeling queasy because of seasickness. She couldn't even get up from her bed. Denise said she had been watching a movie on her smartphone. And Philip said he had been writing a letter to his wife. Logan immediately understood who had hit Mr. Lewis. Do you know it? It was Philip. Look at his letter. The handwriting is immaculate, but it's impossible to write so accurately during a storm. Kayla went on a business trip. She didn't have time to tell her boyfriend about her plans, so she left him a note with clues. In it, the woman wrote, "I'm in the city that is 3 of 7 chicken, 2 of 3 cat, and 1 of 2 goat. I'll be here for a week. Come visit me." Do you know where Kayla's boyfriend should go? To Chicago. Yeah. Look at these guys carefully. Can you tell which one has drawn the graffiti? It's the guy on the left. He has some spray paint on his hoodie. Alan was driving along a small country road when he saw that someone had crashed their car into a tree. A moment later, he spotted a man running toward him. "Help me, please! I was moving rather slowly when a truck suddenly cut me off. I lost control of my car and crashed into a tree." Alan gave the man a lift to the police station in the nearest town. They found the truck driver surprisingly fast. He was right near the doors of the police station. But the man denied cutting the smaller car off. He claimed he was going to the police to report the accident. Suddenly, Alan realized who was lying. Have you figured it out? Look at the tire tracks. It's obvious that those left by the truck go over the ones left by the car. It means the truck couldn't have cut the smaller car off, and its driver is lying. Several police officers were called to a hotel. One of the employees was found unconscious on the floor. The police checked the cameras to figure out what had happened. They didn't see the criminal, but now they had 3 suspects, all of them hotel guests. Sarah said, "I heard some noise, but I stayed in my room because I was scared." James told the police he had been outside. He was trying to catch a taxi to go sightseeing. And Damien said he had been sleeping at home at the time of the accident. Who is lying? Damien. He's a hotel guest. Then how could he be at home sleeping? Beverly was making dinner in the kitchen when she heard glass shatter. She rushed to the living room and saw the window broken. Someone had thrown a stone that was now lying in the middle of the room. Beverly called the police, but they didn't manage to figure out who the culprit was. The next day, when Beverly came home from work, she saw something on her doormat. It was a note. Williamson was the surname of Beverly's neighbors. There were 3 teenagers in that family, Mark, Roy, and Natalie. Which one broke the window? It was Mark. The note says, Williamson. Bruce owned a large store that sold expensive designer items. Recently, there have been several thefts there. The man asked his friend Gabriel, who was a police detective, to check what was going on. Gabriel spent 2 hours in the store. When he left it, he knew who the thief was and who was guilty of these crimes. The thief was the detective himself. He easily stole a pair of costly sunglasses to prove that the store security was very bad. That's the reason for so many thefts. One of these young women has a dog. Can you tell which one? It's the girl on the left. Her pooch has torn her sneakers. When Amy entered the office, she noticed that her colleague Emma was very upset. It was just the beginning of the workday, but someone had already stolen her purse. Only those who worked in the company could get into the office. Amy started her own investigation. Jenna, who worked in IT, said she had been fixing somebody's computer. Joanna, the secretary, answered she'd been on the phone with some clients. James, the sales manager, said, "I've been in a 3-hour-long meeting. I'm exhausted." Amy knew right away who had taken the purse. Can you figure it out? It's James. The working day has just started. How could he be in such a long meeting? There are 2 towns near each other. People who always tell the truth live in one of them. Liars live in the other. The inhabitants of the towns often visit each other. What question should you ask a passerby to find out which town you're in? Ask them, "Are you a guest here?" If they answer yes, you're in the town of liars. If they say no, you're in the town where honest people live. When it's raining, the cat is either in the room or in the basement. When the cat is in the room, the mouse is in the burrow and the cheese is in the fridge. If the cheese is on the table and the cat is in the basement, the mouse is in the room. Right now, it's raining and the cheese is on the table. Where are the cat and the mouse? The cat can be in two places, either in the room or in the basement. But at the moment, the cat can't be in the room because the cheese is not in the fridge, it's on the table. It means the cat is in the basement. And since the cheese is on the table and the cat is in the basement, the mouse must be in the room. Dora was on her way to work. When she was passing by a dark alley, she heard a loud scream. The woman came a bit closer to check it out. Someone was shouting, "Help! Help me!" But as soon as Dora saw the alley, she immediately called the police and ran away. Why? It was a trap. There were two kinds of footprints going into the alley, but no footprints coming out.